More women accusing Eric Swalwell of sexual assault or harassment. An ethics committee investigation thrown out after the congressman's resignation.
There's a process here that we clearly have to look at.
The push for major changes in reporting misconduct at our nation's capital. Shakeup in the race for governor, where remaining candidates stand less than 2 months out from the primary election. California counties bracing for billions in healthcare cuts that could end up impacting everyone.
We're really concerned about what's going to happen in our communities. The potential for us to have to severely gut public safety, elections, homelessness is very, very high if we don't have a robust partnership with the state.
The proposed plan by state Senate Democrats to come up with the money.
Thank you for joining us for California Politics 360. I'm Ashley Zavala. More sexual assault allegations came out this week against former Representative Eric Swalwell. Multiple women have now accused him of sexual assault or misconduct. He has repeatedly denied all accusations. Last Sunday, Swalwell dropped out of the governor's race. He was seen as a frontrunner for the Democratic Party. On Monday, he announced his resignation from Congress. On Tuesday, Lana Drews came forward during a press conference in Beverly Hills, accusing Swalwell of drugging and raping her in 2018. I spoke with her attorney, Lisa Bloom. Here's our conversation. So just catch us up to speed. Since the press conference earlier this week with your client, Lana Drews, what has happened since?
Well, I'm very proud to represent the brave Lana Drews. Right after the press conference, we went to the sheriff's station in West Hollywood, which is the appropriate jurisdiction for her complaint. We sat down with the detective there and a couple of other deputies. She answered all of their questions, provided some evidence, and they then took it under submission to investigate. They asked us to return for a follow-up interview. It's now been escalated to the Special Victims Unit and an attorney from the district attorney's office. So we returned yesterday with these new folks, and Lana again went through the whole story, answered all of their questions, provided evidence. She has some additional evidence she needs to get out of the storage unit. There are some additional witness names, people she talked to after the incident. So we are following up with all of that, fully cooperating with the sheriff's investigation.
And at this point, I mean, just given that, would it be fair to say that you think law enforcement is taking this seriously?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you know, they have raised it up to a higher level. They're taking a great deal of time, and there's no question in my mind they're taking it very seriously.
After your press conference, Eric Swalwell's attorney came out and told News Nation in an interview that regret is not rape. I'm wondering what Lana's reaction to that was after she saw that, if you know.
Well, she didn't say anything about regret in the press conference, so I'm wondering if that's just a canned answer that the attorney gives in any rape case. In fact, Eric Swalwell himself said that he made errors in judgment. He hasn't specified what they are, but we agree he definitely has made significant errors in judgment in his life. He also said that this was a matter between him and his wife, which really doesn't make any sense when you're accused of serious sexual assault of a third party. So he and his attorney are kind of all over the map. We appreciate the many hundreds of people who have reached out in support and offered, you know, just praise and kindness to Lana.
As Eric Swalwell has denied her claims of the other women who came forward alleging sexual harassment or rape, I mean, he's pointed to the timing of all of this as being politically motivated. How would you respond to that?
Well, I mean, that's just amusing because I'm a lifelong Democrat. Had this all not come out, I probably would have voted for Eric Swalwell. So to say that this is politically motivated when you're dealing with, you know, progressives, Democrats, and my law firm, that really doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, what else you got, Eric Swalwell? He's still floundering around for some kind of explanation.
I know you said earlier this week in the press conference that 3 other women reached out to you. I mean, is it possible that others at this point have? Like, how many people so far have you heard from?
Yeah, that number is now 4, and I haven't even really checked my messages yet this morning. So I expect that number will continue to rise. And we're talking to them. I'm not ready to speak publicly about their claims. I'm not authorized to do that. But we expect more people to reach out. In addition, a witness has reached out to me. So we really appreciate that.
Do you expect the victim or the victims or the possible witness, any of these people to speak publicly, or at least the chances of that as you're gauging this?
I really don't know. That's up to them. That's not something we would ever push somebody to do. It's entirely their choice. But talking confidentially to us, of course, for free, is the first step so that we can gather information and help Lana.
We did reach out to Swalwell's attorney, Sarah Azari. She declined to come on the show. Now, Drew's claims follow several other women who came forward, including a former staffer who says Swalwell sexually assaulted her twice when she was too intoxicated to consent. On Monday, the House Ethics Committee launched an investigation into those allegations specifically, but hours later, Swalwell resigned from Congress. And now, because of his resignation, the committee cannot investigate. Now, the committee says change is needed when it comes to the reporting process overall. I spoke with top Democratic member of the House Ethics Committee, Walnut Creek Representative Mark DeSaulnier. Here's part of our conversation. There's been a lot of talk this week that the ex-congressman's behavior was apparently well known at the Capitol. I mean, had you heard of the congressman behaving inappropriately before the allegations came out last week?
No, and as you probably know, his district is right next to mine, south of mine. We both represent East Bay and the Bay Area districts. So, yeah, I am shocked, and I am surprised, and then I am shocked. I didn't hear this. I mean, clearly, other people who knew him much better than I didn't hear it. But yeah, he hid this part of himself from a lot of people. And
just confirming, I mean, your committee had never, I don't know if you're able to say, received reports about him. I mean, because apparently among staff, again, these are just allegations, but some of this was known.
I can't talk about things within the committee's jurisdiction that we've investigated. There's a process here that we clearly have to look at about how people report these incidents so that they feel protected, and there's due process, and accusers get their due process, but there are consequences for people once it's determined that they did these awful things. So we've got a lot of work to do in the House, and I'm going to be part of that, of fixing our system. A lot of us thought we had done a lot of work. I'll point to my former colleague, Jackie Spare, who's a good friend who led these efforts here in the legislature on similar sexual harassment, but we clearly haven't done enough.
What specifically do you think then should be done?
I think the very specific thing is, in terms of preventing these in the future, is that we really have to look at making sure that staff feel like, first of all, that we make sure members understand that these things are going to have consequences. That's probably first. That is first. And then second, that staff feel comfortable in coming and reporting them. So that they're protected. The fact that what I've read and since I've seen other cases and other levels of government is a victim is afraid to report it. A woman is afraid to report it. Well, as a man, I want to support women being able to report when they've been assaulted and feel comfortable with that and know that they're protected. So we have to work on that. And the system we have now is not working. And part of that is making sure all of us know what the process is and making sure members and everyone understands that this level of behavior is completely unacceptable. And there should be very, very serious consequences for anything remotely coming under this. Anyone who does this, if it's true, should obviously be in jail and shouldn't be working in these kind of positions of power.
My full conversations with attorney Lisa Bloom and Representative Mark DeSaulnier are available on CalPolitics360.com. Well, a shakeup in the race for governor with Swalwell dropping out, where the other candidates stand less than 2 months to the primary. Our political strategists break down the state of the governor's race. Now that Democratic frontrunner Eric Swalwell is out of the race for governor, the California Democratic Party is set to give an update next week on where the candidates stand. Our political experts join me now. Democratic Party strategist Steve Maviglio, Republican strategist Tim Rosales. Thank you both for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Steve, let me start with you. What do you expect with the party releasing this new poll, this voter index next week?
I think this race is still a jump ball. The dust has not settled yet. There continue to be allegations that are coming out, and voters are looking around. If nothing else, I think this episode crystallized the importance of voters to start focusing on this race because they've been sitting back. And now they see what the choices are. Hopefully, these last few weeks will have people fasten their seatbelt and decide who they're going to vote for.
Okay, and Tim, your thoughts here?
Well, I think both Democrat and Republican candidates still really need to define themselves to the candidates, or to the, define themselves to the voters. The candidates themselves, Hilton and Bianco, are really splitting Republican voters, even with Trump's endorsement. And on the Democratic side, I don't see anyone has really elevated themselves as kind of a clear leader of the pack. And even with Swalwell out, sure, you see Becerra making some gains, you see Tom Steyer making some gains, all of those are predictable. But still, even though minute, there is a chance on the table that Republicans could occupy the top two spots in this primary election.
So following up on that, I mean, who ultimately, though, do you see benefiting from the Swalwell exit?
Well, I think you're going to have Javier Becerra. I think Katie Porter could probably be the biggest dark horse here. And I do think Tom Steyer has kind of reached his ceiling and doesn't have a lot of place to go. But that's my prediction about Democrats, which isn't always good.
Yeah, Steve, do you concur?
No, I think, Steyer, just because he's been on the air full-time blasting his ads, is going to continue to do well because he's the candidate most people are familiar with. And I think the unions are going to drift there because they align with him on a lot of these issues. Mahan is also on the air for the first time. We'll see his numbers probably pop up. He's from the Bay Area, could take some of that Swalwell vote from the regional aspect. And Katie Porter, if there's a backlash among women voters, I think she stands to benefit from this as well.
You mentioned the unions, and I mean, with the Swalwell situation, the California Teachers Association, California Professional Firefighters, SEIU, all of these kingmaker groups who are involved in essentially anointing those in power in our state. I mean, they all endorsed him, and then they all quickly unendorsed him. I mean, what does that say about these groups and also just about the endorsement process? Does any of it matter?
Well, I think a lot of Democratic groups, not only the unions, went into this with their blinders on because they were looking for the biggest fighter against Trump. And they didn't do the proper vetting that should have been done. We know that now, Monday morning quarterbacking. But I think, the boots on the ground from unions certainly help. The communication from unions and what is expected to be a pretty low turnout election will make a difference.
Tim, do Republicans see it that same way?
I think so. And the fact is when you get these endorsements, a lot of times they're just picking the front runner or who they perceive has the best chance of winning at that particular time. And we've seen instances, not just this one, but even in the past, where they've kind of put all their chips in on a particular candidate, and that candidate has flaws that are found out during the campaign, and things move pretty rapidly. When your star dims, it dims quickly in politics.
All right. Tim, Steve, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, federal cuts to health care and food assistance could leave California counties billions of dollars in the hole. What the lobbying organization for the state's counties say California leaders should do, and a look at the new proposal to come up with the money.
Some state leaders are now officially proposing a new tax on major corporations to help with the state's healthcare costs amid federal funding cuts. It's part of a broader plan Democratic state senators released as lawmakers and the governor prepare for budget negotiations that start next month. Democrats say this new tax on the top 2% of corporations would provide up to $8 billion a year to help with the state's health insurance for low-income people, known as Medi-Cal. The California State Association of Counties says it's encouraged the proposal begins to address some of the issues. Hours before that proposed tax was made public, I sat down with the CEO of CSAC, Graham Noss, about his group's request to state lawmakers. Here's part of our conversation. What are the services at the county level that are most at risk?
It's public safety. That's where the vast majority of county general fund goes. It is homelessness-related funding. The progress we've seen over the last few years would be eviscerated. It's elections. It's fire response. These are the core areas where county general fund goes. And they're going to be cut substantially if we are forced to redirect that money to fund new services and absorb cost shifts.
But the federal dollars that were helping counties, that was for health-related services mostly, like mental health services, money in that space.
Yes, what HR 1 did is it essentially is the federal government leaving communities to figure it out on their own for families that are struggling. So 1.4 million Californians will lose health coverage, 600,000 families that are struggling will lose food support. And we are the provider of last resort in California on behalf of the state. And so for the first time in more than 12 years, we will need to create a system to help those that are indigent because we're required to. And that's not free. It's billions of dollars. And so of the $9.5 billion in annual costs that are shifted to us, nearly 5.5 of that is just related to indigent care for so many Californians who are losing health coverage.
Just taking a step back, California's state spending plan, if Governor Newsom's Department of Finance ends up being right, is about $350 billion. $9.5 billion is a significant number, but it certainly, mathematically seems like it could fit in there. I understand that's not what the California State Association of Counties expects to get the full $9.5 billion, but do you think it's at least possible for the state to make a dent in this?
I think it's both possible and it's expected by those in California. There's a fundamental choice here, which is, will California continue to lead the way in the way that it has for those that are most vulnerable, or will it walk away? And we're hopeful that California will continue to lead the way, as it has for years for those that are most vulnerable. And that's true for this governor and legislature. It's going to be true for the next governor and legislature. There's a fundamental test right here as to what we will do with those who are most vulnerable. And we're not asking for $9.5 billion. We're asking for a harm reduction proposal to mitigate what is devastating impacts in our communities.
So immediately, what's the ask?
Immediately, the ask is $1.9 billion. And then it grows in the second year when there's a full scale that is in place. And in a budget where the revenues are going up, that exceeds $300 billion, where budgets are a reflection of priorities, that seems like a pretty reasonable ask for those in our communities who are suffering.
Graham Knott and I dive deeper into the timing of any potential funding as counties potentially have to make cuts before the state's next fiscal year. Well, voters will decide who's in charge of tracking state spending. A look at the responsibilities of the state controller. This year, California voters will decide who they want to be in charge of tracking state spending. So before you vote, we want to explain what exactly the state controller oversees. Edie Lambert breaks it down.
California voters are electing a state controller this year. So what does the state controller actually control? Here's a quick look at the job. The controller is responsible for tracking and protecting the state's public funds. That includes auditing state spending, monitoring the money situation for local and state governments, and overseeing the payrolls for state agencies and the CSU system. The controller is also responsible for lost and forgotten property that's been turned over to the state. So if you're ever looking for yours, this is the office where you go. The controller chairs the Franchise Tax Board and sits on the boards of some public retirement systems. They also serve as one of 5 members of the State Board of Equalization. The state controller has a limit of 2 4-year terms in office. And as for their salary, last year the state controller was paid $196,000. Back to you.
Right now on CalPolitics360.com, you can watch this week's full interviews. We also want to hear from you. What issues do you want us to cover? Send us an email at contact@CalPolitics360.com. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's California Politics 360. We'll see you next week.